As Christmas and New Year celebrations approach, many Nigerians have, of course, started, and families have started to complain about how much they are struggling to make the festivities memorable due to the rising cost of living and the economic hardship. Following many of our reports, traders have experienced low patronage in this season as families and communities are trying to cope with the difficult times. According to the Consumer Price Index report by the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, Nigerians are also grappling with a record high transport inflation rate of 30.54% in November 2024. Now we're looking at this story and what the implications are. And joining us is policy analyst and founder of TAF Africa, Dr. Jake Epelle. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and compliments of the season to both of you.
Compliments of the season to you as well.
And to my very good friend, your managing director, Kayode.
Thank you very much. Compliments of the season to you as well. People don't feel that the season has been very complimentary. Let's talk about the general sense of, the general mood of Nigerians in this festive season. It would seem, or would you argue that in a long while, I don't know if we've been as depressed during the end of the year celebrations as we have been in 2024?
Well, this is an unusual times, and a little bit of uncertainty taken into consideration. The high cost of food items, transportation, even the decrease in the fuel will not really mean anything. And I tend to agree with my very good friend who has a very analytical mind that we shouldn't be celebrating just because there's a price drop. And don't forget the fact that whenever there's these kind of price adjustment, it doesn't reflect on the adjustment of prices of food. The usual Nigerian way of doing things, once things goes up, it takes ages for those things to come down. So it's a not too pleasant period for Nigerians, taking into cognizance the harsh economic realities. But I want to also be optimistic that there are opportunities to have a very, very good celebration, void of the anxieties of the economic harshness. We can still have very good festive period. Take, for instance, what I'm doing. I'm taking some measures and to provide certain financial support for elders of my community. I have done a survey and was able to capture data of 250 elderlies, persons with disability, very vulnerable women in my locality, and I'm from Opobo Kingdom in River State.
I'm hoping that you're not doing this. I'm hoping that you're not doing this, publicly in terms of people coming in a crowd. You've seen the stampedes that have happened recently. Is that something that worries you as well? The fact that we've had tons of stampedes, about 3 stampedes recorded so far, and about 65 persons who have passed within the space of a week. And yesterday at the presidential media chat, the president talked about how this is the fault of the organizers, saying that if you don't have enough to give, you shouldn't publicize your giving so you don't have more people coming to overflood that. So, is that a concern you have, the stampede, and is that a challenge that you're maybe experiencing as you're doing this kind acts?
Yeah, I have taken that into cognizance and into consideration, and I have also re-strategized. Instead of bringing together these 250 individuals that we are targeting, I'm going to be going to their homes with my team, one after the other. Well, in Opobo Kingdom, we're very communal, so we live in compounds, and so my strategy is to go to those compounds individually, meet with the people that I want to help, and this help is not coming only from my pocket. I have friends across the country, and we put together resources, and we're going to be taking these resources to these individuals. And so for me, the issue of gathering people and all that, we can re-strategize, meet people in smaller group, meet people individually, take things to their homes and drop and share quietly without really making noise. Sometimes the problem is when you gather people and they congregate, you're not able to handle the crowd. Yeah, the president may be right, the organizers have some problems, but the greatest pointer to this is the economic harsh realities that we are facing. People are hungry. So whenever you are out there trying to distribute something, they will literally rush to get those things. So it's not necessarily because the organizers are not organized enough, but I think it is because the people are hungry, and when they find that opportunity to get some material benefits or money or rights or whatever that anyone is distributing, they will rush those things. So oftentimes, those who wants to provide intervention goes there having in mind that, well, I'm just going to cater for 1,000 people, only for them to see that there are 5,000 waiting for the ration of 1,000 people. So the blame is not necessarily, sometimes absolutely, on the organizers, but on the economic downturn that we are facing that is very adverse, and the most marginalized are facing the pain much more.
Yeah, Mr. Epelle, one of the core reasons, we are finding this level of desperation in Christmas season is because of the inflation that has, hit Nigerians in the last 1 year, or maybe even more. The president has a very ambitious plan of reducing inflation to about 15%. It currently is stated to be above 30%. Many people argue that it's way above even that 30%, that 37% that is being stated. Do you believe that it is possible that Mr. President, with the plans that he has currently and the way that the government has been run in the last 18 to 20 months, can achieve 15% inflation?
Well, there's nothing wrong in anybody setting target, but I don't know what the timeline is. Did he say he's going to achieve this in a record time of 1 year, in 3 months? Whatever the timeline is, the reality right now makes that it looks like an economic elementary school economics. It might be very difficult for anyone to achieve that, even in Q1 as we step into 2025. It will be a Herculean task for an economy that they haven't been able to really find a physical policy direction. The tumbling of the naira against dollar does not give us any glimmer of hope. The inability to stabilize the dollar and the naira market is not going to give us any hope to believe what we're hearing. And so I think there's a need for government to retool their economic strategy, to face the realities that the common men in the street are struggling and will struggle for some time. There's a need for us to come out with economic blueprints that would deliver this country from the downturn that we're experiencing. Let's not give people false hope. There's a need to inject confidence and hope in the people, but I don't believe that we should give them false hope. And so for me, those numbers are not, they don't seem to be very realistic. And if you take into consideration what the common man what people in the street are going through. I mean, it was amazing that the queen of my community, when she was here in Abuja, gave me a report of how girls, young girls, are beginning to take their mother's old wrapper and using it as sanitary towel, you know. And I had to put together some funds and send to her to just buy sanitary towels and distribute free of charge to these people. I mean, the situation is much more than anybody can perceive in Aso Rock. It's much more than anybody can perceive from the government house. You know, have you ever gone to some of these governors and even at the presidency, the type of breakfast that they roll out, and how many of them don't even finish those breakfasts at the end of the day? They don't feel what we feel. They don't know what we're going through. They don't know that right now it's very difficult for any father, any mother to go out there and buy common clothes, second-hand clothes for their children. They are looking for what to eat. It is very troubling. And then coming out with economic hope that does not translate to what happens in the street of Nigerians. I don't buy that.
Right. I mean, you paint a realistic picture of what it is, and thank you for sharing, you know, the example from your queen. Reports have it, as at February, the reports were that 37 million Nigerian women were experiencing period poverty. As a working woman myself, I find how ridiculously expensive it is to buy the sanitary product. So I imagine what it is like for the average Nigerian, for the women who are in the IDP camp. Yesterday, the president had a media chat, and, you know, part of the conversations were that he doesn't regret removing fuel subsidy, and it was a very tough decision. As a leader, you need to be able to make tough decisions. He was being asked if he probably thought he should have faced it and done it in batches. Of course, he didn't. He believes that the way in which he's carried it out is a better option. Do you agree with, you know, the president's response to that? It feels like it's an overflogged horse, the conversation about subsidy, but we cannot take away the fact that our economy started to take a different shape when he took out subsidy and, you know, merged the unification of the exchange rate. So do you agree with the president's response, and do you think that that media chat inspired hope?
Well, I am a supporter and a proponent of subsidy removal. The only problem I have with the narrative around subsidy removal is whether anyone is telling us the truth first, that subsidy has actually been removed. You know, it's very troubling when there are counter narratives, even within the government officials. One person says the subsidy has been removed, and then the next minute, someone that is aside, excuse me, you know, in the office of governance will tell us that subsidies have not been removed and that they are still paying subsidies to certain people. That's very troubling. The greatest asset of every leader, of every president, is the fact that once you say something, it is believable, it is credible, people can run with it. But a situation where there's good back and forth, it's very concerning. And so if truly the subsidies are being removed and it is meant to cushion the effect of the downtrodden, the hardship that the common man in the street of Nigeria are going through, then we should see it, you know, in reality. We should see that it has been able to bring down the price of commodities. It has been able to provide access to quality health, the access to quality education, you know, access to social services, the provision of simple daily needs of the people, you know, and when we are not seeing that, and rather we are seeing a skyrocketing economic trend, then it leaves everybody to wonder whether truly and really the subsidies have been removed, and if they have been removed, where is the money going to? I'm not an investigative journalist like yourselves, but I think that there are still some people who are benefiting from the subsidy money.
Yeah. I mean, even if not just subsidy, even if not just subsidy, there's, obviously still, some level of corruption that goes on in the oil and gas sector that still must be uncovered. The procurement fraud, as it is called, in the oil and gas sector and in many other sectors in Nigeria is still very, very, very much active. So, it may not be because we're paying subsidy, but there's definitely a lot of leakages. But there's some other thing that the president spoke about. He spoke about a friend of, I'm not sure if this is a real story, but he mentioned a friend of his that, used to have 5 Rolls-Royce, vehicles, but now drives a Honda. I think it was one of the things that he mentioned in the media chat. So when we hear stories like that, are we meant to celebrate that? Are we meant to interpret that as that Nigerians are now being realistic with the economy and cutting down to a reasonable way of living? Or is that meant to be interpreted as a clear sign that the economy has completely fallen and broken, people's backs across the country? What is the mentality, that we should, understand that type of analysis? That a person used to have 5 Rolls-Royce, but now, drives a Honda. Honda's not a bad car, by the way.
That's very funny. It's very funny and very funny analysis and an example too. I would have been more comfortable if the president is saying to me, to Nigerians, is that, look, I used to go with 20 convoy vehicles that will run fuels of taxpayers' money. I have reduced it to 5. I would have been very comfortable if the president is saying to us that, look, I've decided that I'm going to some sort of cut down government spending, in order to save money. And I've discovered loopholes, and I'm going to ensure that those loopholes are taken care of. I think I would have been very much comfortable if he's saying that, look, I want to live, as an exemplary leader by saying I'm going to cut my pay into 50%, and I've told all the ministers working in my cabinet to cut their pay by 50%. I would have been much more comfortable if he gives strict instruction to ministers and government officials who are traveling that you can no longer travel the way you used to travel. I'm going to make sure that you get less extra code. Using as an individual that was driving 5 Rolls-Royces and now he's driving a Honda, who is this individual? It could also be a figment of his imagination, So it's not a good example. It doesn't show that Nigerians, you're literally saying that Nigerians are adjusting, but you are not adjusting. I find that very, very laughable. I'm sorry to say that.
All right, Jake Epelle, thank you very much for spending your morning with us. Thanks for your time. We look forward to more conversations with you, and of course, wish you the very best of the Christmas season.
Thank you so much, and you guys have a swell time, and keep hoping for the best, Nigerians. It's time to, restructure. This year, for the first time, I don't have Christmas decoration in my house. I would rather save that money and give it to people that can't afford to eat.
That's very noble.
And so we need to adjust, but we need to be hopeful.
Thank you very much for doing that. Really noble of you. We hope more Nigerians will rise up to the occasion to look out for one another. Thank you for your time with us. We'll see you again.